Learning about solids and liquids.
What is a solid? A solid has its own shape. Solids do not make the shape of containers. iPods and a teddy bear are examples of a solid.
Some adjectives that describe solids are soft, cold, rough, bumpy, hard, smooth, hot, squishy, pointy, sharp, thin, thick, shiny, see-through, fragile, and smelly. Exploring solids. An opaque object lets no light pass through, like a table.
A transparent object is one that lets light pass through, like a clear window.
A translucent object lets some light go through, not all, like bathroom window. What is a liquid? A liquid does not have its own shape. It takes on the shape of the container. Water and milk are examples of liquids.
Here are some adjectives: flows, drips, pour, wet, spills, leak, sticky.
Solids in our environment.
There are solids that we need and solids that we want.
Needs help us live.
Some examples of needs are food, shelter, and clothing.
Wants are stuff we want, but things we don't need to live. Some examples of wants are TVs, video games, and games.
Solids we need to be careful around.
There are some solids we need to be careful around, and some of them are salt that people put on their driveway to prevent ice, frozen ponds, transportation, electric tools, and broken glass.
Liquids in our environment that we need for our survival.
Some liquids that we need for our survival is water, human tears, blood, and rain.
Liquids we need to be careful around.
There are some liquids that we need to be careful around, like rivers that we can drown, medicine that we can get sick of if we eat too much, cleaning products, and hot coffee. The scientific name for water is H2O.
H2O can come in 3 different states: a solid, a liquid, or a gas.
The solid state is ice. When ice melts, it turns into water.
When water evaporates, it turns into a gas.
When gas condensates or cools down, it turns into a liquid.
When the water freezes, it turns into ice. A real-life ice problem.
Your schoolyard and sidewalks are covered in ice. What should you do?
Do you sand it or salt it?
We did an experiment and found that salt melted the ice and sand gave the surface friction to keep you from falling.
Both options help deal with the problem, but sand is messy and looks dirty. Salt gets rid of the ice, looks cleaner, but it has a caution for toxins.
I think we should use sand because if you're walking on it, you won't slip. The salt has toxins which then gets into our environment like the grass and waterways.
Good choice, but just so you know, there are some eco-friendly salts available. More science words.
You have already learned the words transparent, translucent, and opaque. Here are 2 more. If a solid or a liquid is heterogeneous, it is different throughout.
If a solid or liquid is homogeneous, then it is the same throughout.
Pizza and salad dressings are examples of heterogeneous.
Apple juice and glass are examples of homogeneous. We've already learned 3 science words. Here's some more: homogeneous and heterogeneous.
Water plus sugar equals a homogeneous transparent liquid. The sugar dissolves into the water.
Water plus sand equals a heterogeneous mixture. The sand sinks to the bottom and the water is now dirty, does not mix.
Milk plus chocolate powder equals a homogeneous opaque powder dissolves in milk.
Water plus powder equals a homogeneous opaque liquid paste.
Liquid layers. Not all liquids are created equal.
All solids and liquids have different density. Density is the measure of how tightly the molecules are packed together in the solid object, liquid or gas.
The more tightly packed the molecules are, the heavier the object is. High density solids and liquids are heavier than low density. We proved this when we layered liquids. Honey is more dense than dish soap. Dish soap is more dense than vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is more dense than rubbing alcohol.
Float or sink. Buoyancy, a force that liquids have to make objects of less density rise to the surface.
We tested objects to see if they were more or less dense than water. More dense objects sink. Less dense objects float. Will the stick sink or float? It will float.
Will the marble sink or will it float? It will sink.
Will the orange sink or float? It will float.
Will the coin sink or float? It will sink.
Will the book float or sink? First it will float, and when it gets all the water inside it, it will sink. The end. We hope you learned a lot.